Hello, I'm Terry Christensen, and this is Valley Politics. Today, San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo will update us on the state of the city and the outlook for the year ahead as his final term as mayor comes to an end in December. We'll ask him about the controversial SB 9 housing law, proposed charter revisions, and how he plans to be engaged in this year's elections, even though he's not a candidate. And we'll have questions from constituents about homeless encampments, pedestrian traffic, fatalities, and voting rights. We'll also ask him to reflect on disappointments and accomplishments during his term in office. And that's what's coming up on Valley Politics. Welcome everyone, and welcome San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo.
Great to be with you again, Terry.
This is our 8th visit, your 8th year in office. So thanks for coming back.
It's always good to be back.
Thank you. Well, let's get right into it. How are city services doing during the pandemic coming? Is City Hall open for business?
Well, the good news is, yes, we're open. The bad news is, of course, like many cities, we're struggling to stay on top of it all. During the pandemic, we really had to pivot, and we had to move a lot of city staff who might have been running programs in parks or libraries or whatever, doing a lot of different things. So we were out there distributing more than 2 million meals a week. We were out there trying to do everything we could to connect 60,000 students to the internet so they could learn online. A lot of things that we had to pivot, drop what we were doing. That meant a lot of things didn't get done while we were trying to respond to the pandemic. So the good news is we're getting it all back together. There's obviously some significant gaps, and I think the most visible to a lot of folks is what we see throughout the city. A lot of blight, and we still are needing to catch up on around illegal dumping and trash and so forth. And so a lot of that work still needs to get done. The good news is City Hall is open in terms of performing all the basic functions. An awful lot of folks are still working from home, though certainly I'm there at City Hall, and I know that a lot of the key services that require folks to be there, at a desk, for example, at the permits office, they're there and they're ready to serve. And so I think we're going to see a dramatic improvement as we're able to get more and more folks back into City Hall. Now we've moved beyond Omicron for now. Obviously, we're going to continue to grapple with this pandemic. But I'd like to think now we've been through this drill a few times. We're going to dramatically improve our ability to serve residents as we're getting back online.
Well, it would help if you were fully staffed up. Like 3 or 4 years ago when we talked, the city had almost 800,000 vacant positions. Right now you have almost 800,000.
I think you meant to say 800,
I think I mean 800, yeah, sorry. 800, let's not.
I wish we had the budget for 800,000 positions, that'd be great.
800 vacant positions. How's it coming? What are the ideas for recruiting people to public service?
Yeah, no question. We've struggled with a lot of vacancies now for many years, and the causes of the problem have shifted. We thought we dealt with the challenge in different ways. We had significant increases in contracts for all of our bargaining units to restore a lot of pay cuts and then go beyond that. And then, of course, pandemic hit, and all employers are struggling to be able to hang on to workers. We've seen, of course, the Great Resignation, a lot. I'm not sure if that has been the cause of the challenge necessarily at the city. Obviously, we've had more persistent issues. What we're doing about it now is, first, more than any other time in my 16 years or 15 years in City Hall, we're engaging a lot of salary surveys. So we're looking at how are we doing on these positions relative to other big cities throughout the Bay Area, making sure that we're competitive, and we have been routinely resetting salaries so that folks know that they're getting paid here what they'd be getting paid in other cities that they can easily go to, because we know that's a big issue, right? Losing folks in that way. But honestly, a really big source of challenges, we're simply losing people who are moving out of California for all the reasons that we've all heard. I mean, certainly the pandemic has encouraged more folks to work remotely. People are discovering, hey, it's a lot cheaper to live a lot of other places.
Yeah. What kind of shape do you think the city's budget is in this coming year? You're going to be giving your March budget message shortly. How's it looking?
Yeah, I mean, good news, bad news. The good news is we're seeing the economy really produce the jobs and the revenues that we critically need it to produce. Obviously, we'd love to see more jobs for middle and low skill workers. We know that's a huge challenge still for an awful lot of our residents. But unemployment rate now is around 3%. It's very, very low. And so we're seeing sales tax really rebound strongly and so forth. A lot of struggles in specific sectors. For example, hotel tax is something we rely on, and it's horrible, right? And the industry has been really devastated. So it's certainly not as bad as it was, for example, during the Great Recession. And I think we're going to be fine. We've put away a lot of reserves. We're going to be able to maintain basic level of services. The big challenge, I think, is that during this pandemic, we ramped up a lot of services with one-time money, with federal money that we had because we had to. We were suddenly in the food distribution business, delivering more than 2 million meals a week. And that has created a certain expectation for a level of a service that we know we cannot maintain. We were doing it during the pandemic, of course, because so many folks were displaced. We've got to figure out how exactly we ratchet that down and still ensure that we don't leave people we don't leave families without food, for example. Those are the kinds of things that are going to be challenging for us, those one-time services now that we either need to figure out either we absorb or we simply stop doing.
Another thing that's been going on is Charter Revision Commission. They submitted a report. The council heard the report and hasn't decided what to do with some of the recommendations yet. One recommendation you've put on the ballot, you voted to put on the ballot along with the council, is changing the date of election for mayor from gubernatorial to presidential years. You support that?
Yeah, I voted for that and I'll support it.
You didn't support it last time we talked.
No.
Because it was packaged with some other issues, I guess.
Yeah, there were a lot of other issues that were packaged, certainly. And you know, I remember having this conversation with Gavin Newsom recently. You know, I'm not a big fan of moving things around on election days. You know, we see that happening in other parts of the country. You know, when the Republicans do it, we don't like it. I'm not sure we should be doing it either. So I do have those very strong reservations. And you know, San Jose was a relatively progressive city when we put the date on a gubernatorial year. Many years ago, I think we were the first big city to be doing that. And now all of a sudden it's considered regressive. And so, okay, we get it. Let's try to put it on a presidential year. We'll get a bigger turnout. We get that. I'm just a little nervous about the idea of manipulating election dates in a way that I still have those concerns.
But it's on the ballot.
It's on the ballot, and I'm supporting it.
Good.
Yep.
Other charter changes you'd like to see? I mean, a year or so ago, you and some council colleagues put together a package of reforms that didn't.
No.
Well, they got referred to the Charter Revision Commission, which then dumped them, basically.
Right.
Are there other changes you'd like to see?
Well, you know, it's not a secret. I'd like to see this be a city like other big cities that has a mayor with executive power, the power to appoint department heads, the power to be able to direct department heads. I mean, I think people are very surprised when they hear that I actually have no authority to tell the police chief or the head of planning or the head of economic development what to do. Everything is directed through council, and that's the way it works in nearly every small city and small town in this country. But large cities have mayors with executive power because there's reasonable expectation that the voters can hold the person accountable who's making decisions day to day in the city. And so whether it's during a pandemic or a flood or anything else, voters want to know who it is who's responsible. And we've been blessed to have a lot of good city managers. They're all great people. They're doing a good job, a lot of hardworking people. But the problem is when it comes to holding people accountable, voters have no idea who they are.
Sure.
And they hope that when they're voting, they're actually going to affect the nature of those decisions. So I still think that's what we have to do as a large city. I think it's very difficult for us to be nimble and effective. And frankly, it's harder for external partners to want to really engage meaningfully with us if they feel like they don't know who's really pulling the strings, who really has the authority to make decisions.
So is there a chance that a change like that will be on a ballot in the
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, we went through that battle.
Yeah.
You know, it was obviously very divisive. And that's why I pulled the plug. I was just tired of feeling like, look, in the middle of a pandemic here, we are going to divide an entire city, divide a workforce over this issue.
Yeah.
This probably isn't the moment. There will be a moment again, I hope, and the next mayor hopefully will be able to benefit from that. I just think at some point or another we need to recognize that there is no accountability for a big city when voters believe they're voting for the person making the decision who's not.
As you know, we have questions from some of your constituents, and the first one is from Teresa Castellanos, who is a trustee with the San Jose Unified School District. Here's Teresa.
Given the attacks on voting rights across the nation, why should we expand who gets to vote? Why is the immigrant vote important to San Jose? Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa, for all your work on behalf of our students. I expect there's going to be a very robust discussion about this as part of a potential charter change. I voted to have this discussion and move forward because I think this is a really important issue we ought to discuss. And there's no question, particularly given the attacks we've seen against immigrants in recent years, that there's a real sense of threat that many of our residents feel, and we are a city of immigrants overwhelmingly. That being said, I don't expect that this will be successful on the ballot. I don't expect that there is widespread support or majority support for separating citizenship and voting rights. I think that is kind of an institution that as Americans have been kind of long held together. I know there are exceptions in particular cities, but I would be surprised if this actually got on the ballot and was passed.
Okay, thank you. So SB 9, new state law, well, it went into effect in January, that allows a single-family dwelling unit, lots zoned for single-family dwellings to be subdivided and 2 to 4 units developed on those lots. San Jose residential is mostly single-family dwelling units, so this could affect almost all neighborhoods in San Jose. What are you thinking about SB 9? Are you support it? Do you see implementation challenges?
Well, all the above. I support elements of it. I'm not crazy about the entire thing, but we're following the law. Of course, it's a state law, and we've embraced it, so we're following through. The reason why I'm not crazy about it is, I was a strong supporter of Senator Wiener's efforts, for example, to significantly upzone properties and really get past a lot of local restrictions to upzone properties near transit, for example, and I thought that was a very good approach. SB 9 is something I support, but I think with reservations. I don't think it's going to create a lot of housing. I think most of the experts who have looked at it realize it's not going to generate a lot of housing, and we're creating an enormous amount of divisiveness throughout the state over these issues. I know now there's a ballot measure to repeal it, which I don't really support. What we really need to do is go back to the basic principles of smart growth, which is, look, there are parts of our city where we really want to densify, and that's where people can walk to transit, they can walk to services and jobs, and that's an environmentally sensible way to develop. It's certainly much better for the city fiscally. We don't necessarily need density way out in the foothills or in the far-flung parts of our city where it's more challenging for us to provide basic services like fire and police. So I don't see SB 9 as being a terribly successful piece of legislation in terms of really producing a lot of housing. It is producing probably more heat than light.
Yeah.
And so we're certainly going to implement it and comply with the law. I'm hoping that we'll find ways to modify this so we can really get back to this notion of smart growth, which we were on a path to try to accomplish. Of course, it's hard work. It means even residents in some of those areas that don't like density, in our downtown neighborhoods, for example, some of them are obviously unhappy with whatever we might be building that's high-rise or mid-rise. But at least we can say, look, people chose to live in a downtown. That's what we get in downtown. It's a harder sell, I think, in a lot of other parts of the city.
Yeah. Well, my husband and I recently built an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, so it's a cottage in our backyard.
Yep.
That's a way to densify a little bit.
Absolutely.
And as you well know, when we went through the process, it was a pain.
I know.
So it's improved now, right?
Well, that's what they tell me. So yeah, you went through in the early stages of this, and we think these accessory dwelling units, or backyard homes, as we call them, are really great ways for us to densify, to be able to create more naturally affordable housing. We've scaled quite a bit. I mean, we had a couple dozen in the early years when you were going through all that pain. We've reduced fees. We've tried to streamline the process and make it more user-friendly because we know homeowners aren't developers. They just need to know, what do I do? And we've dramatically increased number of permits now is more than 400 a year. And we want to see if we can, perhaps with some more creative financing from private sector partners and with a lot of the prefab models, we could really scale that now from to merely at hundreds, but to thousands of units. That's a great way, I think, to add a lot of housing in ways that don't disrupt the fabric of neighborhoods.
It's a little bit SB 9, but not all the way to SB 9.
Yeah.
And I have looked into it, and the process, and neighbors have looked into it, and the process is now way easier. I mean, financing is a problem for people, but still, the process is much improved. So.
Yeah. And we're working on the financing part. More to come.
Good. Thank you for doing that. So we have another question. This is from Akeem Mostamandy, who lives in the Almaden Valley. And here's Akeem.
We are confounded by homeless encampments along our highways. What can the city do to work with Caltrans to clean up our highways? Thank you.
Thanks, Akeem. This is a constant sore spot, I know, for so many of our residents who experience this on every commute. So we had a very spirited debate at the VTA board meeting in February when we had the local Caltrans director. And
you know, VTA is the Valley Transit Authority.
That's a good point.
Just to be clear to everybody.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Caltrans, Akeem knew, and you knew, and I knew, Caltrans is the state highway agency.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry
to interrupt.
So I think as many folks know, Caltrans maintains the highways and freeways. We don't actually have any authority. We can't even put people out there to do it, except when we have their blessing, which requires a papal edict. So for the most part, we've got to work with Caltrans one way or another. They're the ones that run this thing. They've had chronic challenges filling their vacancies, and we've been trying to help them through programs we have, for example, partnering with Goodwill to get unhoused residents back on their feet, cleaning up the city, and then we've helped several of them get jobs with Caltrans and maintenance crews. So we're trying to do what we can, certainly. But what was apparent in that VTA meeting, and I made it very clear based on my review, is that Caltrans has been historically giving Santa Clara County short shrift in terms of dollars. No matter how you measure it, on a per mile basis, on a per capita basis, we are not getting our fair share. And these are ongoing battles. I had a huge battle with the 2 directors ago in District 4, Caltrans, which covers our Bay Area, over this very issue. We thought we had fixed it. Then we saw their numbers again. They still haven't fixed it. They're not dedicating the resources they need to. So I'm meeting again with the Caltrans director, and we are going to have continued direct conversations, and we'll continue to push it in Sacramento because we're simply not getting the cleanup we deserve.
A lot of what you do must be fighting intergovernmental battles. I know I live near Coyote Creek, and the creek is water district and it's city, and the county has responsibility for a lot of homeless services for the homeless, but you're trying to help solve that problem. And then there's Caltrans and VTA, even though you're on the board. Did you know what you were getting into when you became mayor, that there was going to be this sheer intergovernmental conflict, not conflict, but lack of cooperation?
Yeah, there are lots of challenges, obviously, between different agencies, and the reality is, one way or another, the public doesn't care. They just want the job to get done. That's right. And they want people to just get along and get it done.
Yeah.
Actually, they don't care if people get along, just get it done. So you know, as we think about homelessness, for example, which is continues to be a huge challenge, I think there has been a lot of progress between the county and the city in actually collaborating and getting more done. There's more work we still need to do, and obviously plenty to work out. And I'm sure there are things they'd like us to be doing. There are things I'd like them to be doing. That's okay. But we've been at least working hard together. Perhaps more challenging with some other agencies.
Well, speaking of other agencies, you introduced and the council approved a new gun policy on requiring gun owners to have some liability insurance.
Yeah.
It was immediately challenged in the courts. Do you think it'll survive the court challenges?
Yeah, but it's going to be a battle, and we knew it would be a battle. And this is, to be sure, uncertain. I don't want to somehow say I know exactly what will happen, because anytime you're litigating Second Amendment issues, there's a lot that has not been considered before. What we're doing, no city or state has ever been done, so it's never been challenged. So we will learn. But I feel confident this is constitutional for a few reasons. One is taxes on guns and ammunition have existed in this country since 1919 at least, so this is not new or novel. Second, the notion that we would regulate some exercise of constitutional rights is not per se barred by the Constitution. When these litigants who filed the lawsuit against us filed the lawsuit, they had to pay a fee at the courthouse steps to exercise their Seventh Amendment right to civil jury. When newspapers published stories about this under the Supreme Court clear holding, they still have to pay taxes to exercise their First Amendment rights to publish a story or to put out a newspaper. These are all constitutional rights that are important to us. The question is whether the regulation, the fee, the tax, whatever it might be, is an undue burden. I don't believe it is. This is a very modest regulation. We're asking people to get insurance. Many of them already have it through their homeowners or rental policy. It's very easy to get and very inexpensive, in some cases at no cost. And the fee is $25 a year, and I can tell you a gun costs, in some cases, hundreds if not thousands of dollars. We feel this is certainly not burdensome.
Well, good luck. Not sure the U.S. Supreme Court is going to be friendly, but we'll see. It's great to see the city taking initiative on some of these issues. Now here's a question from Diana Crumedy. She's with the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition. Here's Diana.
San Jose has seen a disturbing number of pedestrian fatalities, and sadly, we're only 1 month into 2022. 10 San Jose residents have been killed on San Jose streets in the first month of the new year, with 60 residents last year. What are your ideas to make sure that the city has zero traffic deaths or major injuries over the coming years? Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks, Diane, for your advocacy with the Bike Coalition and for safety for pedestrians, cyclists, and everyone. Yes, we have had a horrific run. In just the first month or so, we lost 10 San Jose residents. 4 of those were lost in traffic collisions, that is in auto collisions. 6 were pedestrians, which was particularly disturbing. 5 of those 6 pedestrians were crossing a street outside a crosswalk. And so that's telling us something. Clearly we need to do more around education signage and in some cases erecting barriers mid-block where we think that a lot of mid-block crossings are happening. Mm-hmm. What we know is that very high disproportionate share of our fatalities and serious injuries are happening in a very small number of our streets. It's very high speed roads typically. There are 17 corridors we've identified where 55% of our fatalities are happening. And so we've identified these as our Vision Zero corridors where we really want to invest a lot of dollars in trying to slow traffic down, because that is the critical determinant as to whether or not someone survives or not in a collision, is the speed of the car. Yeah. So when we can, for example, narrow lanes, add bike lanes, for example, which really narrows the frame of reference for drivers, we know drivers would drive more slowly and we get fewer injury accidents. So we're implementing a lot of those measures as much as we can using what we call quick build efforts, because we know doing anything out on a roadway costs millions of dollars quite often. What we've discovered over the last couple of years is that using paint, using plastic bollards, they may not be super sexy looking, but they do the job to really start to change behavior out on the roadway and slow traffic down. And so we're implementing a lot of these quick build projects along those 17 corridors where we're seeing the worst. I think what's really important at the state level that we need to get over the goal line, something that my friend David Chu originally authored, now Laura Friedman's authoring, is this automated speed enforcement. It's going to be really important for us to be able, because we're never going to have enough police officers to be able to handle traffic enforcement in the city. We have the most thinly staffed department any major city in the country, and it's been that way for 20 years. So we need to be able to use technology where we know we're having a lot of injury accidents to be able to slow folks down. And we're using some innovative approaches too. If we can't give tickets with automated speed enforcement, we're looking at, for example, behavioral insights and nudges. Maybe we can send text messages to the driver saying, hey, we saw you driving pretty fast on Blossom Hill. and your neighbor's been complaining about the speed, want to let you know we're going to be out there enforcing next week. So maybe we can slow folks down. We're going to try a lot of different approaches like this to see how we can affect behavior of drivers, because that is the critical issue.
So we're in an election year.
Yeah.
To change the subject dramatically. Are you going to endorse in the council and mayoral races?
Yeah, I will. I haven't made all those decisions yet. We're still sorting through it all. And I'm still actually meeting candidates for the first time.
And you're sitting on a big bag of money with your political action committee, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Are you going to be, that'll be to support candidates you choose to endorse?
That will probably, a good question. We're sorting it out with the lawyers to make sure I can actually be involved in those decisions. I may not be involved in those decisions. But yes, I have fundraised for that fund, that PAC with a number of other organizations. And the effort is to try to support independent candidates who are not strongly aligned one way or another, who support jobs and housing in our city.
We have about 3 minutes left, which isn't enough time to talk about your biggest disappointments and your greatest accomplishments in your just over 7 years as mayor. So, biggest disappointment?
Yeah, that's not difficult. Homelessness.
Yeah.
I think that would be true for every large city mayor, west of Denver, I think. It's been such a huge challenge for us in the Western United States. And we've tried a lot of innovative approaches, from tiny homes converting motels back in 2015, before the governor made it popular. Now we think we've landed on something around the quick build apartment complexes that we're building these communities. We were able to build very rapidly during the pandemic and get a lot of people off the street. We need more resources. So I think we're now landing on something that is starting to get some traction, along with some prevention measures that we are taking that's also cost effective. We just have to find solutions that can scale. We know we don't have the billions of dollars of resources to build the beautiful apartment buildings for everybody. We need solutions that can scale, and I think we're finally getting there. I want to really dramatically increase the amount of quick build communities that we're going to be launching here in our city, get 1,000 units under construction this year.
City's definitely done more than it's gotten credit for. Now we have a minute left for your greatest accomplishments. Sorry not to give you more time.
I think when I came in, this was a city that was very inward looking, and we're bleeding for a lot of different reasons, from a lot of different forces. I'd like to think my greatest accomplishment would be enabling a change in our orientation, to look to the future and to look outward. Whether it's preserving land in Coyote Valley for future generations, whether it's building a great downtown with BART and Google and all the things here, whether it's around making really big investments in students in East San Jose. More than 1,500 now are going to get a path to college through San Jose Aspires program, or after school programs, a host of others. The investments in the future, the focus on the future, I think that is the most important contribution I feel like I've made. And hopefully we're going to see that continue.
Well, congratulations on that. Thank you for being with us once more today. San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo, thank you.
Always a pleasure, Terry. Thanks.
We'll be back next month with an all-new Valley Politics. Meanwhile, you can follow us on Facebook, and you can catch up on all our previous shows on our website at creatvsj.org, or on YouTube by searching for CreateTV San Jose. And now, that's all, folks. Thanks for watching.